Welcome, Soul Family, to another episode of Awaken with Carla, the podcast that empowers you to awaken your mind, nurture your body, heal your heart, and nourish your soul. I'm your host, Carla, and I'm so thrilled to have you here. In each episode, we'll explore the realms of health, wellness, spirituality, mindset, and manifestation, all with the intention of guiding you towards unlocking your highest potential. Together, we'll embark on a transformational journey of self-discovery where you will gain practical tools, inspiring insights, and personal stories that will inspire you to create positive changes in your life. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude to all of you amazing listeners. As you know, one of the things that makes Awaken with Carla so special is the opportunity to learn from incredible guest speakers who are experts in their respective field. Their wisdom and their experience brings a wealth of knowledge to each episode, inspiring us to live our best lives. So, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Kate King. Kate King is a licensed professional counselor, a certified art therapist, and she'll be joining us today to talk about how to navigate life by being fully authentic and with integrity. Kate is the founder and owner of the Radiant Life Project, and she was recently awarded the 2022 Best Counselor of Littleton. Her mission is to create a ripple effect of health and meaningful joy in the world by helping her clients and audience learn how to cultivate radiant lives for themselves that shine so brightly they impact and improve the lives of those surrounding them. She is also the author of The Authentic Mother and is working on her new book, The Radiant Life Project. I've had the privilege to dive deep into this fascinating conversation with Kate, and I know that you'll be captivated just as much as I was. So, as I mentioned in this episode, we're going to be exploring how to live life authentically and with integrity. Kate shares her unique perspective, her practical tools, and powerful techniques that can help us step into our authentic selves. Whether you're seeking advice on physical health, emotional well-being, spiritual awakening, or aligning your mindset for success, you're in the right place. Our intention is to provide you with the tools and inspiration that you need to create a life full of meaning and abundance. So, get ready to ignite your curiosity, expand your consciousness, and awaken the extraordinary that lies within you. Let's dive into today's episode of Awaken with Carla. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. And remember that the power of transformation lies within you. Quick reminder before we jump in, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and download, depending on wherever you're listening to this episode. Now let's get started. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. I'm so happy that we got a chance to do this call and have this conversation. I'm really looking forward to picking your brain a little bit more about this idea of what it means to be an authentic and live with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get started, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you and who you are and what got you started on this journey of really wanting to create a ripple impact and a ripple effect.
Yeah, it has been a meaningful journey since day one, really. Since I was little, I have always had an interest in the human mind and the psyche and creativity. And even before I knew what art therapy was, I was kind of engaging it myself as a child through my entire adulthood too. So when I finally stumbled across art therapy as a field of study, it felt like I had been doing it my whole life, but I needed to learn the ins and outs of it. So a lot of the way that I practice has been woven into the story of who I've always been. And through my trainings and educations and certifications and licensure, I've just really buffed that up with the skill base. So I have a private therapy practice that I've run for about 15 years. And I see different mental health, personal growth, trauma oriented, motherhood oriented clients, all kinds of people who are really looking for impact and change and growth in their lives. And last year in 2022, I took a sabbatical because I had really some pretty severe burnout. And so I took that time to investigate what led me to that place of burnout and how I can continue offering the work that I love so much in a way that doesn't drain my life force energy. And that's how the Radiant Life Project was born during my sabbatical. It was really kind of a huge restructuring period where I understood and maintained the way that I want my therapy practice to look from here on out. And I also added some writing, speaking, retreats, and different types of offerings to sort of offer more kind of an appetizer platter of healing and growth for different audiences instead of the one-on-one as the exclusive. So that's how I got to where I am.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Tell me a little bit about your sort of story and journey with burnout. I mean, that's something that I experienced myself, and I feel like so many individuals that are on this sort of journey or on this path, they've to some extent experienced burnout from their previous lives, and that was a bit of the catalyst to sort of propel them into something new and something more exciting, maybe. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience with burnout and what did that look like for you, and what were some of the things that you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. So I experienced burnout as kind of at the tail end of when the COVID pandemic was really kind of starting to soothe itself back down. And I was in my own version of fight or flight throughout the pandemic because I was managing my own fears and uncertainties of the pandemic, having my children suddenly homeschooling and remote learning, which we had never even heard of, let alone known how to do. And in my marriage, we had some stress with my husband's business and just all the impacts of the pandemic. So there was a lot going on personally, as there was for everyone. And then on top of that, I felt like this immense pressure to help maintain the mental health of my community and the very large caseload that I had been carrying, which I think had probably been too large all along. But at that time, I just didn't think there was such a thing as too large a caseload because it felt like the more people I can help, the better. And I really didn't consider the depth of my own self-care. Even though I had a self-care practice, it was not adaptable to the point where the pandemic really needed us each to build something different for ourselves in terms of the way that we relate to ourselves in the world. So I ended up having the ways I knew I was burned out is my empathy was really low, which was odd. And my compassion also, I just didn't have enough bandwidth to care as much as I normally care. And as a therapist, that's a problem because that's sort of the job description. I also noticed it in my personal life. I started to sort of isolate from a lot of my social connections because I just felt like my life was too full and couldn't sustain any more people. And so I stopped having the really fruitful, generative connection with my friends that I needed. And I think I just started to feel really exhausted and short-tempered with my kids, with myself. My sleep was kind of off the rails. So, yeah, those were kind of the signs. And then I dealt with this guilt about once I understood that I needed to take a step back, I had this flood of, oh, we don't do that. We don't just stop helping people when we're helping professionals. That's the identity.
Right.
And so because I do all of the inner work myself that I teach others, it was an immense invitation into my own personal growth and inquiring, what are some of these narratives? What are some of these core beliefs? Like, why am I asking things of myself that I would steer my clients away from if I could? So I came up with the idea of the sabbatical. And it was interesting because at the time I announced it publicly to my community and my colleagues and everyone who knew me. And some people were really disappointed, and they had a response like, "Oh, you're not supposed to need a break. You're just supposed to be this robot that keeps giving."
Machine.
And then
Right.
there were others, therapists in particular, that emailed me on the side, and they were like, "I feel this way too. I don't know how to untangle myself in the way that you're talking about, but thank you for making this public so that we can normalize burnout recovery." And so now I really help to support other therapists move through their burnout process and prevent burnout from happening, because I think we live in a world where we're not as okay as we seem, and it's normalized to
Yeah.
pretend like we're more okay than we are. And burnout's
Yes.
a really big part of that.
Yes, a really big part of it. People don't realize how many people are actually suffering from burnout. The statistics that we see online are just what I think are just the people who have admitted that they've gone through burnout and have allowed it maybe to get to a point where it was non-functional. But I think that we have a lot of people that are walking around with what I would consider functional burnout. They're still coping, they're still managing, but they're at that early, maybe even in some cases, like middle stages of, real burnout in the body and in the mind and the soul. And you're right, we don't deal with the real issues any longer. I think that over the last few decades, we've sort of become a society that we pretend that everything is okay. And we have this belief system that, we have to stay positive all the time. And, we've had a big movement in consciousness and sort of energy and understanding what energy it all is, and shifting into, positive thoughts and positive thinking. And that's all great. Absolutely. Those are all things that we need to lean into, but it does require to do the deep work for us to be able to be in a place where we can actually truly be okay with the things in our life, and more than just okay, be grateful for the experiences that we have. But we do need to do the work. It's not about just brushing the challenges that we have under the rug and pretending that we're not fazed by them or we're not impacted by them in any way, and just push forward as if, things don't, as if we don't have these experiences in life, right? And I think that's very detrimental to the soul and the core of who we are. And like you said, it puts us in a place where we are no longer operating as the people that we truly are. We start to act and behave in ways that are very foreign to us and very outside of the character that we have and the individual that we identify with. And it's difficult sometimes to piece it together as to, why are we behaving this way when we have so much on our shoulders all the time. So it's really
Absolutely.
important to start the conversation around what burnout looks like, and, equipping people with different tools that can help them identify it and then overcome it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel very trapped, and that might be one of the reasons. There are these societal expectations, but then there are the pressures we put on ourselves. And I think it's
Absolutely.
the culmination of both that create this feeling of being really cornered in a situation that you need to get out of, but you don't know how to do it gracefully without burning bridges or without losing the income you need or the
Right.
relationships that support you. So there's a lot of this, like, I know what I need, but I don't know how to get to it, push and pull. And
Mhm.
those are the kinds of really deep conversations that need to happen so that you can understand what's rising up within yourself that might be similar or different from the other people around you who are experiencing the same burnout.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Which, when we're sort of speaking about that, it leads to my next question around how does someone navigate that journey and really get to a place where they are coming from what they feel is an authentic side of themselves rather than, this character that we all build, right? We build all these identities around, as you said earlier, around, whether it's the people or the places or the things that have been in our life, we form identities around all of those situations. But often those identities are not the real true core of who we are. They're just the masks or the facade that we put out to the world. So how do we sort of navigate, the pressures from the people in our life and the pressures that we put ourselves under, but still come from a place that is more true and authentic to who we are as individuals?
So this is why authenticity isn't enough all by itself. This is why I pair it with integrity. And
Mhm.
it's one of the 3 pillars of the Radiant Life Project, authentic integrity. The other 2 are creativity and aligned relationships. Maybe we'll talk about them later, but I want to make sure that we really talk about why authenticity all by itself isn't enough. So
Okay.
authenticity is the truth of who you are. It's the realness. That's the essence of your being. And there are qualities of authenticity that have always been you and will always be you. And there are qualities of authenticity that change as you grow and develop and move
Mhm.
through life. And so having a pulse on your authentic self as a consistent kind of reading is important because you're not always going to be the self that you once were. So
Right.
knowing what's real for you and who you truly are is one piece. The integrity piece, that is the truth. So authenticity is what is real and integrity is what is true. And when you put those together with authentic integrity, then you start to look through your life, not only about what's real for me, but what's the truth about how unhappy I am, how misaligned this feels, how am I self-abandoning? Because we can be authentic and also be self-abandoning at the same time. We can
Mhm.
also do the right thing and be in integrity, but not be our true selves while we're doing so. And
Yes.
so I
Yes.
think I think authenticity and integrity make this really beautiful pair. And when they're embodied together and practiced on the daily, that's when we start to make change in our lives that aligns with who we truly are and with what feels the most congruent with our purpose and our capacity.
Amazing. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, well, what can one expect once they come into alignment with those two, the integrity and the authenticity? Once those two come into alignment in someone's life, what can someone sort of, maybe expect is not the right word, but what are the possibilities that can sort of open up in someone's life?
I think it rings like if anyone in the audience has played an instrument, and when you hit that wrong key, and it's like, "Wah," and you know that
Mhm.
wasn't the right key.
Mhm. Mhm.
So living with authentic integrity feels like hitting the right key, where it's like, oh, yes, that feels like a yes. And it's a mind, body, soul yes, which I call true yes. So there's true yes and there's true no. And then there's sort of the spectrum in between. And true yes feels like hitting that right chord. I will say, though,
Mhm.
that once you bring your life into alignment and into this authentic integrity space, sometimes it disrupts the homeostasis of your relationships or of some of the
Mhm.
dynamics in your life that have been built upon your self-abandonment or your misalignment.
Right.
So sometimes it's important to stay the course when you switch tracks into authentic integrity, because relationships that have been invested in your self-abandonment aren't going to appreciate your authentic integrity.
Of
So
course.
it takes time for misaligned relationships, misaligned careers, other things in your life that aren't congruent with your highest good. It takes time for those to fall away and be replaced by the aligned people and things. So it's okay if once you make this change, it feels a little unsteady and maybe a little tumultuous at the beginning. That's normal, because when you build a life without authentic integrity, it's going to include people, and it's going to include things that carry that resonance of misalignment. So you can expect that. But once you get to the other side of letting that homeostasis resettle, then it feels generative. It feels inspiring, fruitful. Your sleep improves. Your entire physical body could improve. We see scientifically there are huge benefits to the immune system and to the overall well-being of our minds and mental health and our physical health when we live in congruence with both authenticity and integrity. So it's like every aspect of your being, every cell in your body is saying yes, all at the same time. And then you get to live that way, which is incredible. And it feels buoyant. Beautiful.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Thank you. Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that I really teach my clients, is the understanding that all aspects of ourselves are interconnected: our mind, our emotions, our physical body, and our spiritual well-being. We really need to start to operate from a place that keeps all four of those operating in perfect harmony. As you said, in that perfect, like when you hit that note and it has that perfect sound, is exactly how it's supposed to be, right? And our bodies we are designed in that exact way, but we have to bring all of those layers of who we are into harmony before we can come into alignment. Because, we might have our mindset right, but if we're not eating healthy food, then the sugar and the toxins that we're putting into our body are going to affect our emotions. They're going to affect our mindset. They're going to affect our physical body. The toxic thoughts that we have are going to have an impact on our physical health, right? We've seen, as you mentioned, there's so many studies out there that show the connection between our emotional state or our mental state and our physical well-being, and how, different conditions or different ailments can be linked to carrying and holding certain emotions for extended period of time. So it's really important, not just, for our mindset or our ability to sort of step into our power, but really for our health and overall well-being, that we really need to invest that time in ourselves and invest that, like you said, sometimes it can be challenging to focus on what we need, because we're so programmed to believe that we need to constantly be serving others, but we cannot give to others what we have not been able to give to ourselves first, right? And so having, our glass replenished first, or putting on our oxygen mask first, is going to be exactly what we need to be able to continue to give more to others. So we have to get into that practice of self-care. If that's, it's a broad sort of topic, self-care, but we do need to get into a practice that has us connected to those aspects, those truer or authentic side of ourselves, and start to operate with integrity, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's also important to attend to ourselves as systemic creatures that are, mind, body, spirit is our system, but we also have all different parts of our psyche, right? There's the parts of us that are I know that I have a worker bee part that I can count on to get stuff done. And then I have the nurturing mother part that shows up with my kids. And I have the wounded child part that shows up in all kinds of situations. So all of these parts are constantly kind of volleying back and forth to each other with the responsibilities of life and with the demands of connection and all of the needs. And it's really complex. But that's only our inner system. Then there's this entire external system, which is our connections, which is our leadership, which is our environment, all of the things outside of us that we feel a part of, and we notice the pull from, where These are where our shoulds or supposed tos come from. This is where our lineage patterns and ancestral family patterns come from. So we are part of something that is massive. And the only way to know who we truly are is to be touching in on it regularly, because it is so quickly changing. And so when you talk about self-care, I think it has a lot to do with awareness and just turning your gaze inward regularly, whether it's through meditation or a creative process or walking in nature, whatever works for you, writing, music, and consistently just be saying, how's it going in here in response to all of this other stuff? And that's a starting place that can eliminate a lot of the overwhelm that comes with the potential for all the growth that we can access. But we got to put our pants on one leg at a time. So it's the same thing with our inner growth. You have to start somewhere that feels accessible.
Yes, and take it one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is some of the common pitfalls or challenges people face when it comes to maintaining their authentic integrity? And do you have any tips for how maybe we can overcome those?
Mm-hmm. I think we hold ourselves back in some ways because we are habitual creatures and we develop patterns throughout our lives that are our adaptive strategies for survival and belonging and connection. And we tend to do what works, even if what worked in the past wasn't so healthy. So an example of this might be if someone says yes when they really mean no to a social get together or a new job opportunity. They feel like they should say yes, or they're propelling themselves toward yes, even though there are some warning signs. This can be a pattern for somebody. So noticing if you have a pattern where you self-abandon or you override your integrity for some external validation, some reward system that knocks the dopamine but doesn't actually give back in a really deep intrinsic way. Awareness is a really good way to start with that pitfall. Actually, awareness is probably where we start with all of them. But so some of these can derail from a habituated, pattern-oriented space. And another really common place where we derail from our authentic integrity is being part of a society that tells us who we should be, and layering on all the pressures about how that's supposed to look. And that links back into what we were talking about with burnout culture, that, we're supposed to hustle and that makes you successful. Your status matters, your money matters, the, popularity matters, but nothing real matters. Right? Those are all the illusory pleasures of life that ultimately no one on their deathbed says, I'm so glad I had all these illusory pleasures. Yes. They're all talking about how much love they felt in their life, right? So I think those are probably the two places that we can get pulled out of authentic integrity, is with our patterns and with the external pressures that we give into.
So how can one stay true to their values or their beliefs, especially when they're facing those external pressures?
Yeah. The first thing I think is really just to acknowledge in our conversation, and for everyone that's listening, that this is an everyone problem. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, that sounds like me, I feel really bad about that, please don't feel bad about it. It's actually really normal and it's really unhealthy. So all of us being adapted to this unhealthy culture makes us unhealthy. And that's an epidemic, I think, right now. So please just be gentle and graceful with yourself as you move through this work. So that's what I want to say first. Now, having awareness is the most important starting place. And that means noticing when there's something in your body that doesn't feel congruent. That might feel like fatigue that doesn't seem to go away. That might feel like a twisting or kind of an irky feeling in your body that is like I wish I didn't have to do that, or a feeling of dread, a feeling of obligation, or a sense of responsibility that feels burdensome. These are all indications that something you're doing in your life is misaligned with who you actually are and what feels true for you. So your body will communicate to you in a sensory way. It doesn't have words like our mind, it has sensory experiences. So if you start to have health problems, particularly unexplained health problems like autoimmunity, like GI issues, like headaches, psychosomatic disorders, these are all indications that there's some misalignment going on, and your body is like, stop, pay attention. Because if we don't stop and pay attention, eventually our bodies will stop us and make us pay attention. So the sooner you can have awareness to the misalignment in your life, the less you're ultimately going to suffer in these ways. Now, once you have awareness and you're like, ooh, I keep saying yes when I actually mean no, then you have to do the accountability work of changing that pattern. And this is the hard part. Sometimes it's easier to notice what's going on than to take the action to change it. So I would say it's really important to surround yourself with aligned friendships and community that can really help you hold yourself accountable for the changes you need to make. This might look like a therapist, a coach, a support group, a best friend, a spouse. These are loving, trusting relationships in your life where you can figure out how to start to change and do things differently. And that is a long process. It's not a one and done. It takes a lot of repetition. A lot of the time, my clients will say, like, Kate, aren't you tired of me talking about the same thing? And I always tell them, no, because we heal in a spiral. And so you keep revisiting the same topics, but through different vantage points as you move up in your healing process. And so you see things in new perspectives that you couldn't have seen before because they weren't freed up yet until you got to where you are.
Right.
So we have to have the awareness, and then we have to actually make the change. And when we make that change, we need to do things differently than we ever did before. And we have to hold ourselves and our own accountability as the highest priority in our lives. Because in a culture that supports self-abandonment, nobody's going to hold that accountability except us.
Right. So for someone who's struggling with that, to hold themselves accountable, what tips or tools do you have for someone who can have the self-awareness, but it's struggling with the implementation of the change?
Well, I think it's good to bring somebody on board if you need help in terms of, therapy or coaching. Coaching is great if you just need some applicable steps or some tools and skills. Therapy is really important if you feel like it's connected to trauma or mental health patterns, or really kind of deep patterns that you don't quite understand. Because sometimes when you change your life to align better with who you truly are, you face some really hard things about your past, about some regrets you may be carrying, and why you're acting inauthentically. Sometimes that's a survival strategy that is a trauma response, because we had to behave in certain ways to stay safe in the world. And then we just continued behaving that way after the threat passed. So an example of this might be like a child in a household with an abusive parent. They may have had to stay quiet and be really agreeable in order to stay safe. So then long after they've moved out of their parents' house, they find themselves in relationships where they don't know how to use their voice. That's a trauma response. And that needs some really deep healing. And when you go into that healing, you just want to be with a guide who can really support you so that you don't get kind of destabilized. Because if you get destabilized, then your nervous system starts to whack out and nothing really productive can happen. So I would say get the support you need, whether it looks like a therapist or coach, or maybe it just looks like a weekly walk with your best friend where you have an agreement to check in with each other and say, how's your authenticity journey going this week? This is how mine is going. You can also check in with yourself in a writing process. A lot of people like to keep just a daily diary of how they're doing. And it can be as simple as a Likert scale from 1 to 10. How authentically did I live today? And then at the end of the week, you go back and you look at all your scales and you're like, mostly twos. I guess next week I'll try to do better.
Right.
So somehow just keeping tabs in a consistent and regular way is helpful, because I think that's where people get kind of derailed, is they forget. And then before they know it, it's been 3 months and they forgot to even think about authenticity or integrity.
Okay.
Right. So weaving it into your life in some way that's accessible for you every single day, so that you can reflect, is really important. And then I think if you notice that there's a certain tipping place where you keep getting stuck, like you can say the truth in certain settings, but not in others. Maybe in your work environment, you feel like you're self-abandoning more than in your home environment. Then you get to look at that as kind of an isolated little sphere. And you can say, what is it that's about this specific situation that feels so tricky? What is this challenge telling me about myself, and what's left for me to heal in order to pursue that growth that I'm looking for?
Right. I mean, and that's just it. The journey of healing is an never-ending journey, right? We're always peeling back another layer. And the way the subconscious mind works is, it only presents what we're ready to resolve and deal with at any given moment. So it's always a journey of healing. Well, thank you. I appreciate those little tidbits. What would you say to someone who, say, is tempted to compromise their values when they're on this path? Like, what sort of, is there something that you would say to them that can trigger them to sort of come back to operating from that place of authenticity and integrity when they're sort of feeling the pressure to compromise on themselves,
Yeah.
compromise on their values?
I think there are two things, and maybe both will work for one person, or maybe these are for different people. But for someone, I might say, how's that worked out for you before? And invite them to really remember, the last time I did that, I ended up in a place where I felt terrible because I self-abandoned, or now I have this relationship going that's built off of an unauthentic foundation, right? So how'd that work out for you before? And then for another person who might be more future oriented, I might say, consider the long view. If you choose to self-abandon in this moment, how might that derail the future that you're hoping for?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you do the opposite, if you make the authentic choice, how might that affect the future that you're hoping for? So sometimes we have to, I think a big practice of living in the moment is crucial, but sometimes we have to think about the past and the future as like our guiding posts, because ultimately I think of time as just a series of, links on a chain, and that's our life, and they're all connected. And so we can learn a lot from our past, and we don't have to live in our past by repeating it. And we can learn a lot about our hopes for the future without necessarily attaching in case they change. But we do have this gift of memory and of future projection that I think are helpful for people who are struggling in the moment.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. Because, I mean, in the last few years, it's all about living in the now and in the present. And we have to do that because our society has definitely gone off track when it comes to that. We're all about the instant gratification and what is the next best thing. And we do need to learn how to come into the moment. But I think having that perspective that we need to take perspective and guidance from the past and look to the future to help us move forward and propel us from the places that maybe we feel stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to live in the present, but we want to visit the past and the future for information.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. So what do you believe are some of the benefits of living a life fully authentic and filled with integrity? Like what are some of those benefits?
Well, I can speak for myself that it has sourced a real love of myself. I really like who I am. And I'm able to be really loving and soft to the parts of me that I didn't know how to accept before I did this journey. So it allows me to leave a lot of space for the messy parts of me or the unhealed pieces, the uncertain parts. It just creates a lot of compassion. And it also does this for me externally, because I've been so intentional in living authentically and with high integrity. I've attracted relationships that value that too. And that's part of the conversations I have with my kids, even though they're little, and with my husband. So this has become a community value in my family and in my friendships that is really generative. It gives a lot back to me, and it feels really reciprocal in a way that's meaningful, because when I was living out of authentic integrity, I was in a lot of imbalance with the people in my life, where oftentimes I was the one who was giving, but I really wasn't receiving. So I receive better now. And it just feels so good to be able to take care of myself. I also, I was able to give up some unhealthy behaviors that I really don't need anymore. I haven't had any alcohol in over 2 years. Not that it was an addiction for me before, but I think it was something I felt I needed to do socially, or it was kind of the way to wind down from a hard day. But now that I'm living with authentic integrity, I don't need anything to be a buffer between me and my experience. I can just be with my experience. I can tolerate a lot more discomfort. I can be sad. I can be tired. And so the ripple effects of that mean when I'm not drinking alcohol, I'm sleeping better. I'm feeling great the next day. There's all of these positive things. So the authentic integrity path has these sort of immediate little changes, like these habits or these friendships, but it also has the longer ripples that are like, well, you just feel better, feel more energized, feel more purposeful. And that's been a real gift. And I like to teach it now too.
I love that. And then when you feel that way, when you have more energy, I mean, the opportunities are endless, right? Because when you choose to invest that energy wisely, you can really create a life that you want for yourself, right? As opposed to being in that lower frequency energy or in that stuckness energy, right? You just get your life force back. There's just something about our energy that is different when we're coming from a place of authenticity and operate with integrity, right?
Yeah, I think of it like the pilot light of, a flight,
Yes.
where just turning that pilot light up. And the beauty is that when you're living through the authentic integrity framework, you notice when you start to get tired, and then you
Right.
rest. So
Right.
that helps too. Like it's not just burning that flame down to nothing. It's honoring the flame when it tells you that you're tired, or when you need a rest, when you need a day off, and keeping that connection with myself where, yeah, I have a lot more energy, but I still get tired. I still get irritable. I'll still have certain moods where it's like, okay, Kate, we don't have to force something. Let's just get cozy right now and read a book, where maybe before I wouldn't have done that because I was attached to that hustle culture and the doing pattern. And so now I don't do that anymore. I listen to the body, and then I give myself what I need so that I can benefit from it in the long term.
I love that. Listening to the body. It's so important because the body speaks to us.
Time.
What would you say are the keys to finding that balance between sort of being true to ourselves while still respecting the people and the relationships that we have in our life? Because a lot of people struggle with striking that balance. So, are there some, tips that you can share with us that can help with maintaining that balance?
Yeah. So this is that practice I mentioned before of true yes and true no.
Oh,
This is a
yes.
somatic experience where
Mhm.
you start to understand the language of your body and how your body speaks to you. So the best way to just start is to close your eyes and imagine that you're looking at like a movie theater screen,
Mhm.
and just call to mind your favorite food on the screen and have a picture. For me, it's like eggplant parmesan on the screen. And then I notice my body. What does my body do that says yes, eggplant parmesan, right? There might be like a lightness. There might be like a salivating in the back of my mouth. Like my body is saying yes. Okay. Then I clear the screen and I ask myself, visualize the food that I just like absolutely cannot. I just don't like. For me, it's eggs. I'm not into eggs. So I'll put eggs on the screen and I'll feel my body have a no response. It feels tighter, more kind of twisty, maybe a little heavier. You can maybe feel like a disgust somewhere in the body. So by doing something as simple as your favorite food and your least favorite food, your body's going to teach you what yes and no feels like. And then once you get a little bit more practice, you can start to throw in more complicated questions like, how do I feel about this person up on the screen or that relationship, that job, right? All these things. And you look for the same signs of yes or no in the body. And then if you are using the accountability measure of having a good friend or a therapist to help you, talk to them about it and tell them like, wow, so I got this no response about this food that I hate, but I also feel that way about my husband sometimes, or, like in what ways are we hearing no from our body that we are not listening to?
Right. Well, thank you. I love that. It's a really easy way and a practical way for people to really tap into their body and start to know the difference between the yes and the no. And I like that you use that picture screen example. I think it'll be easy for people to really implement that into their day-to-day and start to sense into their body and how their body communicates with them.
Yeah. And for those listeners who are not so visual, you can also do this in writing. So like if you write down your favorite food, then you can just write down some of your associations with that favorite food. Like, how does it make you feel? Does it make you excited? Does it bring in a good memory? And it doesn't have to be visual. And then you do the same thing with the food that you don't like. And then you can use that writing process with those more complex questions once you kind of understand the way that your body talks to you.
Perfect. I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Radiant Life Project?
Yeah, the Radiant Life Project is all about that pilot light inside of each and every one of us. It's about how to help to nurture it and to really cultivate what your individual pilot light needs so that it can absolutely roar with brilliance. And when our pilot lights are roaring with brilliance, the beauty is we feel a lot of benefit and it emanates beyond us. Because when you're around someone who is living this way, it's contagious and it's modeling. We're constantly modeling for one another. So why not model next level wellness and radical self-care and health and joy? So this work is really deep and meaningful work that has these measurable benefits that radiate throughout and beyond ourselves. So I like to teach a lot of this. I like to talk about it. I like to work with people on it. I like to make art about it. And so the Radiant Life Project offers a lot of different ways to tap into this, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's attending a retreat with me or having me come and speak at an event. This is my hope, is to make it accessible for people who can't afford weekly sessions. They can buy my book for $34 or whatever it's going to be. So I'm hoping that, we can really share this with the most amount of people and really raise the frequency of our world.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think we share in that common interest of wanting to create that ripple effect and really to help, increase the consciousness level of our planet. And I think that's why I love speaking to people like yourself that are on this journey, that are here helping and supporting others, because I think that's what it's going to take, right? Is one light helping to illuminate the path for others. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you. So my last question for you, which is the question I ask all of my guest speakers, is what advice do you have to offer someone who is just beginning their journey towards this sort of self-discovery, their personal growth, or, exploring that authentic self, authentic side of themselves? Like what advice do you have if you're like really at the beginning stage of this whole journey?
I would recommend that you give yourself a lot of freedom to explore the many different paths to healing and only pursue what fits for you. So listen to a bunch of podcasts, read a bunch of books, check out influencers or podcasters or whatever, and see what aligns for you, because there are a lot of roads that lead to healing and growth and evolution. And it's important that you find the right one for you. So there is no one size fits all approach to healing, and certain people are going to take better to some modalities than others. So do some research and think of it as fun, think of it as exploration, and then just follow the breadcrumbs of what interests you and continue to pursue the things that feel both challenging and satisfying in terms of your own awareness about yourself. Because when you feel challenged, it means you're growing. So just follow those breadcrumbs as long as it feels aligned. And if you work with a teacher or listen to a podcaster or whatever for a while, and then suddenly you're not getting so much from them anymore, shift. Sometimes, we have to go from one school of thought to another because our next level of consciousness, our next chapter requires a different teacher. So stay adaptable and keep your mind open.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Kate. It was so lovely having this conversation with you today. I've learned so much, and I know that the audience will take a lot from this discussion as well. So really, thank you. I appreciate it. Just lastly, if you can tell us where we can find you, maybe on social media, or if we wanted to get access to your books, where could we find those?
Yeah, a good place to start is just my website. It's theradiantlifeproject.com. And I'm also on all the social medias at the Radiant Life Project. I've got a retreat coming up that has one spot left. And so if you're interested in that, it's in April 2023. You can find that information on my website. My book can also be purchased on my website and on Amazon. It's called The Authentic Mother. And my new book, The Radiant Life Project, is supposed to come out this fall, 2023. So it's a great idea to go on my website and join my newsletter, because that's where I will notify everyone of all the events and of all the releases and all the good things as they happen.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And I'll make sure to link your website and maybe the book link in the show notes for everyone.
Great.
Thank you again. I really, really appreciate your time today. It was so lovely. As I said, so lovely having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
And to all of our truth seekers, we hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as we enjoyed having it. So thanks again, and tune in next week for another amazing conversation. We'll check in soon. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this transformative episode of Awaken with Carla. I hope you found inspiration, guidance, and some practical tools that you can apply to your own life. As we come to the end of this episode, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the wisdom that I've gained and the insights that we uncovered together. Remember that transformation is a journey, and it takes consistent effort and dedication to create those lasting changes. Here are my key takeaways from my conversation with Kate. To live a life with authenticity is not enough. We need to pair it with integrity. Authenticity is the truth of who we are, the realness of our being, and it changes over time. So who we are when we're children versus when we're teenagers versus when we're young adults versus when we're middle-aged adults versus when we're older adults, that will always change. And so we need to recognize that we're always going to be evolving and changing. And so being authentic with who we are in the moment at that particular time of our life is very crucial and important. And so integrity is what is the truth. And so it's important for us to bring those two together, our integrity and our authenticity, and operate from a place where we are being truthful of who we are and allowing that to step forward into the world. The second thing that I learned is that as we start to live our life with more authentic integrity, certain things can actually start to shift in our lives. We actually might start to see certain things fall away, certain people, places, or things that no longer are in alignment with who you truly are. When we start to operate from that place of being real with ourselves and being honest about who we are, rather than just sort of going along with the flow so that it appeases the people around us, so that we hold on to the relationships that maybe we formed when we were younger are no longer in alignment with us. Or whether it's, a physical location, you're living in a place that once made you happy, but now as you've changed and as you've gotten older, it no longer resonates with you. And that can apply to anything, whether it's relationships, our careers, our friendships. At the end of the day, as we evolve, so do the things around us in our life. And that may mean that certain things will start to fall away. And the more you lean into trusting that you are coming from or operating from a place of authenticity, the more that you will start to invite new things into your life that are in alignment with this new version of who you are. So it's important to understand and accept that things are going to change the more you lean into living a life that's full of authenticity. Lastly, one of the things that I walked away with from my conversation with Kate is that we want to live life in the present, but we want to review the past and the future for information. We need to gain perspective and guidance from our past, as it holds a lot of wisdom and information. It can provide us with the healing that we need to let go of some of the things that we're holding on to in the present moment. We also need to look forward to the future and to our horizon so that it propels us to move forward and take steps forward, so that we don't feel stuck and we can actually start to create the changes that we desire for ourselves in our life. So remember that revisiting the past will allow us to gain wisdom, insights, and information that can help us unlock some of the stuckness that we're feeling in the present moment, in order to allow us to propel forward into the horizon, into the future, with all of the beautiful goals and intentions that you have for yourself. I hope that you found some wisdoms or insights from my conversation with Kate that please, I would love for you to share with me in the comments below, or send me a message. And remember that I encourage you to take the knowledge and inspiration that you're gaining from these episodes and find ways to integrate them into your life. Embrace some of the practices and the mindset shifts that resonated with you from this episode. But more importantly, remember to be patient with yourself as you navigate this personal journey. Remember that healing, self-discovery, spirituality is a lifelong pursuit. And I encourage you to keep exploring, to keep learning, and growing in your own unique way. If you have any questions or you would like to share your own personal experience, I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me through social media or through my website. And remember that you're not alone on this journey. I'm here to support you every single step of the way. Before I wrap up, I wanted to express my deepest gratitude for the incredible guest speaker, Kate King. Her wisdom, her knowledge, and her expertise have enriched this episode and brought us valuable insights. And if you'd like to learn more about her, please be sure to check out the show notes as I've included all of her links. Lastly, I wanted to thank you, my amazing listeners, for being a part of this community. Your support, your feedback, and engagement means the world to me. And together, remember that we are creating a space for growth, connection, and transformation. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your family and friends, and make sure to leave me a comment below. Your support means a lot to me, and it helps me on my mission to empower individuals to live life with more fulfillment, more meaning, authenticity, and purpose by helping them tap into their wisdom and their full potential. Remember, the power to awaken and live your best life lies within you. You have everything you need to manifest your dreams and create a life full of purpose and meaning. Until next time, keep embracing your journey of self-discovery, nurturing your well-being, and awakening to the extraordinary that's within you. Stay tuned for more empowering episodes of Awaken with Carla. May you find peace, love, and light on your path.